There's a lot of things that I wanted to be able to talk about on this. We've got some tax proposals on the table. I have a bipartisan charitable act dealing with tax policy that we're not going to have time to be able to talk through. I'd like to be able to talk about full expensing. Senator Toomey used to be able to champion this, but it's a big issue for our manufacturers in my state and all around the country. Love to get a chance to talk about that. I'd love to talk about marriage penalties in the tax code because, quite frankly, they're still there. It's one of the things we've got to be able to work on, energy independence. I did notice a whole new set of new taxes on energy companies in the United States that I think would hurt our energy independence. And there's still no definition for the $600 if you do Venmo payments to somebody up to $600. Now the IRS is going to track you. I've noticed that you've delayed that, and the IRS has delayed that. But there's a lot of questions with that and new creative definitions of what it means to be made in America. We now have new treaties that are popping up that are not really treaties, not really free trade agreements, but are being declared free trade agreements to allow from the Inflation Reduction Act actions from Japan and Germany to now be defined as made in America. I find that very creative. Love to talk about all that. Don't have time. I need to be able to drill in on a couple of things. Let me start with some of the banking issues we're dealing with on it. Will the deposits in every community bank in Oklahoma, regardless of their size, be fully insured now? Are they fully recovered? Every bank, every community bank in Oklahoma, regardless of the size of the deposit, will they get the same treatment that SVB just got or Signature Bank just got?
A bank only gets that treatment if a majority of the FDIC board, a supermajority of the Fed board, and I, in consultation with the president, determine that the failure to protect uninsured depositors would create systemic risk and significant economic and financial consequences.
So what is your plan?
We made that determination.
Right. So what is your plan to keep large depositors from moving their funds out of community banks into the big banks? We have seen the mergers of banks over the past decade. I'm concerned you're about to accelerate that by encouraging anyone who has a large deposit in a community bank to say, we're not going to make you whole, but if you go to one of our preferred banks, we will make you whole at that point.
Look, I mean, that's certainly not something that we're encouraging.
That is happening right now.
That is happening because depositors are concerned about the bank failures that have happened and whether or not other banks could also
No,
fail.
it's happening
And
because you're
it's-
fully insured no matter what the amount is if you're in a big bank. You're not fully insured if you're in a community bank.
Well, you're not fully insured. And
You were at Signature, and it just barely met that threshold. You were at Signature.
Well, we felt that there was a serious risk of contagion that could have brought down and triggered runs on many banks. And that's something, given that our judgment is that the banking system overall is safe and sound, depositors should have confidence in the system, and we took these actions.
So there's a
to
special
discourage
assessment that's been done
contagion.
on community banks in my state and all banks across the country. Was there any discussion that that special assessment would only apply to the larger banks, or was it always assumed the special assessment would cover every bank, including rural banks in my state?
I think, I'm not certain what the rules are around that. That's for the FDIC to determine.
It has been reported publicly that SVB had a large number of Chinese investors that are there, including some that were companies directly connected to the Chinese Communist Party. Will those individuals, companies, entities, and investors that are Chinese investors be made whole based on assessments in my banks in Oklahoma? So what I'm asking is, will my banks in Oklahoma pay a special assessment to be able to make Chinese investors whole from Silicon Valley Bank?
Uninsured investors will be made whole in that bank, and I suppose that could include foreign depositors. but I don't believe there's any legal basis to discriminate among uninsured.
I get it, but I'm
depositors.
just saying that my community banks are going to pay this additional fee. It is always fascinating to me as well, the conversation that taxpayers are being made whole in this, that taxpayers are not going to have any kind of consequence on this. I'm sure my bankers are going to be very excited to know they no longer pay taxes, and their banks no longer pay taxes. Credit unions don't pay taxes, banks do, and so they're definitely taxpayers as well, and all banks make their revenue off of rates and fees and such to their account holders, which means every Oklahoman will pay higher fees in their community bank.
We're just going to have to move on.
If we have a collapse of the banking system and its economic consequences, that will have very severe effects on banks in Oklahoma that will also be threatened.
I'm just worried about the long-term
We are going to have to
consequences
move
on our banks
on,
as
or
well.
we're not going to get all senators in. Senator Cortez Masto.